Hi, I'm True Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. I originally wasn't actually ever going to do this review because, well, I kind of forgot about this movie a bit, because I was busy with a lot of other stuff with my life, until a commenter actually asked me to review the movie, since I did say I was going to review it. Kind of forgot that too, again, got really sick, so forgot about that. But, because of that comment, I rewatched the movie because, might as well. And that movie made me so annoyed that I literally stopped doing any other thing just to do this one. Because this movie is just awful. While I do think it's bad, I at least have sometimes, it really depends, think of it at the same level of Charles Counterattack. Which, if you don't know, that movie's even worse at times. And which I'll actually have to talk about a bit because this movie's actually a sequel to that movie. Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that piece of crap too. Joy. Though I do want to also say this, since this review is going to be a bit different. Throughout this review, I'm not going to actually go plot point by plot point, but more overall go over problems that I have with the movie whenever they come up to me. I know it's not the best way to do a review, but this movie pisses me off that just going plot point by plot point is both annoying and ridiculous. Because, well, we can actually get to that right now, since we're starting the review right now. So this is a review of Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, where I should have called it Mafti. This movie's plot, if I really had to explain it, is lackadaisical. Basically, nothing really happens that's really important to remind people. I mean, there are small things, but those small things are so unnecessary to recollect that you can outright ignore them and could have been just thrown into the next movie with really no consequence, if I had to be honest. To give a condensed version of the movie's plot, which is actually kind of very more easy than really this movie could do in any way, our movie follows Mafti Aaron, or Noah Hathaway. That's the title of the movie. He's basically a terrorist, an eco-terrorist at that, which just makes him all the more likable, where basically he wants everyone to go to space, because the Earth is getting polluted very much so, which is not entirely wrong, because, well, I mean, when you nuke the rainforest, I think you're kind of fucking up the planet a bit. During one of his plans to kill off some cabinet members of the Earth Federation, he meets up with two people called Gigi and Kenneth. Gigi's some random girl in the movie who really does not matter, and Kenneth the guy who's going off to a base where he plans to try to capture Mafti. Some stuff happens where Mafti's base has to be moved. He also gets the Key Gundam, or the Gundam for the movie, and the Penelope Gundam, which, side noting here, since I'm never going to talk about the Gundams much, they look awful. I don't know what's with them, but they're way too bulky for this movie, because they really never feel like they're intact with any Gundam designs in the Universal Century. They just feel out of place. He basically wins and they go off. Kenneth learning that he was Mafti Aaron all along and planned to do stuff. Gigi's also here. Again, I only mention her because she's going to be important for stuff. And that's really it. Nothing really actually happens much. I really didn't even mention any tertiary characters like Lon, who's just here. I mean, for God's sakes, when he's gonna become important for the next movies, it feels like they didn't really try to do anything for him, or even try to build him up. Because of all intents and purposes, he's the rival character to our main protagonist. Yet his inclusion to the plot is so unnecessary. I mean, for God's sakes. If I didn't mention him, he would literally not be on my radar, because, again, I only know of him because I read the book, or at least a summary of what happened, because this is based on a book. That's never got translated, by the way, which is just fun, of course. I really want to talk about one scene that just really shows how lackadaisical this plot is. There is a scene in the movie where Mafti is just walking for a solid minute. Nothing really happens, it's just Mafti walking to his base. That's it. Well, I mean, he goes on a boat but you get the idea, right? Nothing happens. This is all unedited, by the way. It's just a minute of nothing. Why? And there's one more scene that I really did hate because it's kind of stupid, but at the same time, it's not stupid. If they actually explain, like, why he did that actually makes sense. So Mafti is heading out of a building because they're getting attacked through Mafti. I know, I'll get to that in a bit. Basically, he sees his guys over there. They're trying to pick him up. He also has Gigi, who's this movie's love interest, which gets really annoying, as I'm gonna explain in a bit. He also has another love interest. Yeah, at the end of the movie. Because if you didn't know, that's gonna become something later I'm gonna have to talk about. Joy. And well, his group is right over there with a car. And instead of going over there with Gigi, he instead just runs in a different direction for some godforsaken reason. And the movie really doesn't explain why he doesn't just go with his partners. They don't really explain it. I mean, granted, there's an easy explanation of, well, they're in a war zone and I'm pretty sure the roads are filled, as shown in later scenes. He could have easily thought that going in a car would be a death sentence and just running in another direction. But no, the movie doesn't give one, and it's really bizarre. And yes, I know it led to one of my favorite scenes of the movie, this scene, which I'll never call it bad ever, because it's just really beautifully animated. I just really like it. And to briefly talk about the movie's animation, it's quite good. And like, I still don't like how Hathaway looks, because he just feels out of place, because his face is designed in this weird manner in comparison to other characters in the show, but whatever. And I feel like the movie could have instead filled the time with, I don't know, explanations of certain things. Because there are a few things in the movie where it doesn't actually explain what the heck they mean. To give an example of something the movie doesn't really explain, is in that in one scene, Kenneth is explaining that his superior, or the guy he's taking over for, is doing a cleanup operation of a town where some terrorists were from. You have no idea what the hell he means. What he actually means is that he's going there just to kill them all. Yeah, he's straight up murdering a town. I only mention that because the movie doesn't really explain what the hell a cleanup operation is. I mean, I know because I looked it up, but if somebody just said they're doing a cleanup operation, what the heck do you think they mean? If you want a bigger example of the movie not explaining something, you go to the Hunters, who are even worse than the Titans, which, if you don't know, they were pretty bad. How so? I'm pretty sure they didn't actively put people in slave camps in space. Yes, they did that. And no, that is not explained in the movie. It's like the details of the movie were just thrown over there and no one actually asked them to actually put them in the fucking movie. Cause the only reason why I was never really on Mafti's side throughout the movie, and I'll really get into him in a moment, was because the threat of the Earth Federation was not really given, or really why we want to see him succeed. And well, if those details were in the movie, let me tell ya, I would be on a lot more of Mafti's side than you would think. Though not by much, because Mafti's side is kinda still stupid. I kinda wanted to say this now since I feel like I need to say this, that yeah, the Earth Federation's evil, let's just be kinda clear about that. Cause let's be real here, I'm not defending Zeon, but let's not pretend that the Earth Federation wasn't the cause of it, or at least doing a lot of shit that it shouldn't have. And again, not to mitigate the crimes of Zeon, which they have done a lot of shit. And yes, I am saying that both sides are wrong, but at the same time, I'm saying that one side really needs to fucking acknowledge it did a lot of shit wrong, and even more wrong, as shown in literally any of the Gundam media. And really, again, I'm not saying that Mafti's side is not wrong, but they're not really likable. Hi, future me. I originally actually forgot to mention this, and I really don't know why. But, originally when I was talking about they're not very likable, well, I forgot to mention a few things about them. So, let's mention them now. The reason why I don't like them is because they're hypocritical assholes. Yes, I'm being serious. So, okay, there was a scene where Gallman, this guy right here, was fighting some of the Federation forces. And he was basically had his back towards the city behind him, where basically we said, "Ha! You can't shoot me!" And then they proceed to shoot him because, he's a terrorist, and if they let him go, he might cause more damages, so a little damage here, not as much as the damage he might cause later. Not gonna pretend that they weren't assholes still for doing so, but I can at least see the logic. But then the movie, for some strange reason, turns this around and says, "Oh yeah, you guys are low and pathetic for doing the same thing we did. Even though you're actively harming people and, you killed people." I find that whenever you use the moral high ground, you gotta have to be a little more certain, because I don't take bullshit from any side. Or Mafti, really, because really, there was one scene that really made me understand why I didn't like Mafti. In the scene where he's getting the X Gundam, I literally cannot pronounce that thing for the life of me for some reason. Anyway, he gets it and he's talking about the reason why he was on that ship. Because the planet didn't even need him to be on the ship. He was just there. For one reason. He wanted to see their face before killing them all. And you want me to be sympathetic to this guy? Or hell, really explained. Again, not really anything in this movie is really explained. As far as the movie's concerned, there are only a bunch of eco-terrorists, and that's really it. They don't really explain why they hate the Earth Federation. I mean, if you've been paying attention to the Earth Federation in literally everything they've been in, you've been shown that they're a bunch of assholes who really don't care about the base noise or their plight. And the movie really doesn't actually explain anything about their details. Which really confuses me, as I feel like the movie's trying to pull something, but I'm not entirely sure. It feels like the movie's trying to be morally ambiguous, but the movie really hasn't done anything to show that both sides are wrong, both sides are right, or anything. It's just doing stuff. Like, do they want the Earth Federation gone, or do they want to reform it, or what do they particularly want more than everyone off the planet? Because that seems like their only goal. And it's not really helped that Mafti, the leader of this organization, is barely characterized throughout the entire movie so that we could care about it through him. I've been calling him Mafti, and this was actually in my original script for this review. And I keep calling him Mafti because he's barely characterized other than being Mafti. Yeah, he's the son of Bright Noah, but that barely ever comes up in the movie to be meaningful. I mean, I tried to get some characterization from him, but it's barely ever there. And I mean, there's also that he loved a person called Quez, who I'm just gonna get into right now because I really don't want to talk about her. She was a psychopathic bitch who, if she didn't get her way, would go throw a tantrum and do something stupid, like, I don't know, join Neo Zeon and try to destroy the Earth. Which also the movie tried for some godforsaken reason to shove her into our faces, trying to make us like her, when no one did. She was by far the worst character in that entire fucking movie. Though then again, everyone in that movie was half-written terribly and thrown out of character for some godforsaken reason. And I have to repeat, this movie is a sequel and canonical sequel to Charles Counterattack. Because that movie plays a part into this movie, because Hathaway explains that his goal is to try to make sure that their sacrifice wasn't pointless. Which is kind of bizarre, because you trying to make everyone leave the Earth makes the people who fight for the Federation, makes their struggle pointless because they don't want to leave their home. And I repeat, I don't think any side was entirely wrong. It's just that both of them were so stupid that they were going to do some stupid shit. Though there is a character like Quez in the movie, though at least she was not terrible as her. I mean, she was pointless to the entire plot, but that's just better than literally making me outright want to stab her. That being the character Gigi, who I feel like the movie was trying to push her as Mafti's romance, but no, because again, he already has the love interest at the end of the movie, which, again, the movie does not explain her at all. And again, they barely characterize Gigi much. there's barely any time where I gave a crap about Gigi at all. I mean, throughout the movie, they're trying to give her off as this mysterious character, but I could care less because there's nothing grounding me to wanting to learn about her. She's apparently a mistress to some guy who never even explained in the movie who the hell he is, so again, I could care less about her because if the movie's not going to explain any details about her, why should I care about her? And I mean, like, the movie tries to make Hathaway try to really like her, which really does fail as, again, they don't really connect. I mean, like, at least they talked more about a lot of things, but still, they still aren't interesting enough. And that leaves me with the last character that feels important to this plot, Kenneth, who feels the most interesting because at least he has the personality than stoic. And I mean, like, I made that comment about Kenneth making that weird scene, but at least he's doing something. He always feels like he's thinking about a lot of things. And I'm not trying to, like, diss on all the other characters, but that's just what it's in my mind because he's at least wanting something. He wants something. He's after Mafti, his goal is straight up stated, and there's reason compelling you to want to watch him. I mean, granted, yeah, he later tortures someone, which just kind of kills any enjoyment of his character, but still. Because really, I only make that comment because he just straight up tortures someone for no reason. I mean, it comes really out of nowhere and doesn't really fit his character at all, since we don't really see anything like his commitment to the military at all, which was in the novels, by the way. Hell, I could barely even characterize another character who, again, is going to become important later, Lon Aim, and yes, Gundam names have always been stupid, who's barely here for, like, a few minutes, which is bizarre because you would think that they would want Lon in the movie a little more interacting with Mafti, just so that they can have some repertoire with each other and have some lines together, maybe see where they diverge a lot. But the movie doesn't seem to care about that. It seems to really not care about a lot of things. And now I really want to talk about a few things that really don't have to do with the movie, but at the same time it does. Because I want to talk about how this movie kind of makes me feel about the Universal Century timeline and pretty much my favorite Gundam, Unicorn Gundam. For those who don't know, my favorite Gundam is Unicorn Gundam. It's pretty much one of the better Gundams in the franchise, as it's really, really damn good. Not without flaws, really. The fuck, yo. But in that story, there was a sort of idea about the possibility for change. Its central antagonist, Full Frontal, was cynical about this change, that he believed that humanity would not change, that unless he forced them to change, they would never really change. But in the show, they made a point about how everyone, even though they were all against each other at one point, came together for this one idea. This idea of peace, of the fighting ending, and letting everyone just stop. And this movie reminded me of a line from a game I played once, but the future refused to change. This movie, in my feelings, represents the antithesis to Unicorn Gundams as a whole. It basically tells us, yeah, humanity's not going to change unless you force them to. Through force. Not instead of using knowledge. Instead, force them to change. Because they're not going to change for any other reason. And I really hate that because it just proves that Full Frontal was right. The main villain of that show. And this movie just says, yeah, he was fucking right the entire time. Give up on possibilities. Only focus on what you can do. What you can make others do. This is why I'll never like this movie. Because no matter what, this movie basically told me my favorite Gundam did not matter. And in fact, kind of tells us that, yeah, all of our Gundams, all Gundams in the Universal Century timeline, didn't matter. I mean, those conflicts they stopped in the shows, they didn't matter. They didn't stop. Not because of anyone fighting for a cause. No, they just stopped because, well, we just hit them hard enough. Not because we tried to stop more fighting. Fuck. That it's pointless to change how we are. Change how we do things. Change the systems we are in. Change. My God. And I find it ironic that Gundam has this message about war is bad, but its main series, the Universal Century Timeline, the conflict never ends. There is never a stop in the fighting. There is always more fighting. Never peace. And the people who seek peace die. But I want to go, before we end this, to answer the question I was given at the beginning about why I'll like G-Savior more than this movie. If I had to be honest, in the end, this movie did nothing. Well, G-Savior did something. Yes, G-Savior was not a great movie. It did not do a lot well, but for what it did, it was trying to say something. It had a plot. It had something to do. There were characters to care about. There was a goal for our protagonists to succeed at. In Hathaway, our characters' goals and the characters themselves are not really well established, nor really cared about much. The movie has no real direction. This movie has nothing. And thus I ask, why would you want to watch it compared to literally any other movie? In the end, this movie's just boring. Regardless of my own feelings of how this just bastardized my favorite Gundam, the movie's fundamental flaws are that it's a boring plot that does nothing with the time it had. It does nothing, the characters don't grow or change, nothing really matters, and nothing really happened. It's just there until the sequel happens, which I refuse on a fundamental principle. Next time, we're starting up my project, and oh god, I actually have to talk about that now. Shit.